or free response, you're going to need specific factual information, what we call the ACE, to kind of make sure you answer the prompt, answer the question, and then you're going to cite evidence. That's where you have to have that specific factual information, and then you have to explain using historical thinking skills, comparing, contrasting, what are the causes and the effects, what's the change over time, what is going on here at this period. So this is why you're going to need these next several videos this week and next week for this. And I will be trying to annotate around on here as I edit this video for the most important things that needs to be highlighted. So really you can take notes from the videos here, and that can kind of set aside your time for this. Make sure you're setting aside time during the day. Not necessarily probably that you need anything on the weekend unless there's something that you forgot that's due, that's on the weekend. But I think use the weekdays, set aside your time when you finally wake up to do your work and all your work. This Friday, this is, April 3rd, you'll hear more about the APUSH test itself. I will send out a message, whether you see my live big fat face telling you more about the details of the test. Some of you already, who are very conscientious and studious will know what the College Board has put out as far as details, just to see that we have, just kind of confirm that we'll have a APUSH test. We do know two things: free response, and we know it's going to be 45 minutes. Then we'll come up with specific dates and the kind of like specific format to prepare for. What I will do in the future videos, as we get closer to those, taking those tests online, we'll do a little bit more of that. I'll do an online live streaming, answering questions, and do more like kind of pinpoint what you guys need to be prepared for. Okay, great. Listen, there are no questions on the time periods. Nobody's going to ask you when was period 1 begin, all right, when did period 2 begin and end. You do need to know context, and can you say what happened around those events, what it means to have the Puritan migration. No, the Puritan migration is in the 17th century, not the 16th century. You do need to know that. So I keep emphasizing you don't need to know dates per se, but you do need to know time periods, or what happened around during that plus or minus 10 or 20 years. What is going on in Jacksonian democracy? What are those approximate years of his, presidency, and that you know that for sure. Deal breaker dates, I've said them before, I'll say them again. These are the ones, I'm just think that it's a given that you know what's happening, during the years 1607, 1776, December 7th, 1941. Other dates that, again, are great to know, I would say bonus, 1620, like, the Mayflower and the Pilgrims coming over. From my 1676, you got the ending of the King Philip's War, Bacon's Rebellion. You got 1876 here, which is, the Battle of Little Bighorn. Other dates that you can recall is bonus. You can always say around this year, around this particular century, this decade, people were more like participating in government, or this is where English colonization began to really start in the Western Hemisphere is during the 17th century. You can use those times. All right. So anytime I annotate some dates up here, something like that, you should immediately recall 2 or 3 significant events, ideas, or people. That's what you should be testing yourself on. It's like, wait a minute, he said the 17th century, okay, 1600s, early English colonization here. We've already gone over about 100 years of since the time for Columbus. I'm thinking about Massachusetts Bay Colony, Jamestown, a Pope's Rebellion, or something of that nature you should be recalling. That's all I'm saying. So test yourself on this, on these things in here. Very good. So let's, without further ado, and it's very important, the beginning part here is trying to explain what's going on. What about period one? And I have on the Moodle the PowerPoints that you guys can just go there. It's on top of the Moodle. Anything that's most recent I talk about is on top of the Moodle that you can go through and just kind of review yourself and take time in. That's more than details. I'm not doing a PowerPoint or saying look at here and just display here. This is time to look at my little annotations or things that my little props that I'm trying to explain to you that you need to know, that you need to look at. You can always go to other YouTube videos and search out more information. All right. 1491, 1607. You're immediately thinking, oh yeah, this is the year before Columbus. So, usually at this time, this test is about 5% of the test. You're saying, so Mr. Price, it's 45 minutes. I don't need to know anything about period one. Not exactly. It's not going to be 5%. It may not even be a question that you will answer, or, you know, if they've given you choices. But it gives you base knowledge that you compare and contrast, that you can pull for evidence, change over time. You can see the effects of, you know, encounter and colonization here that you can use in your responses. So don't discount something just because that you think that, like, well, I won't have to know anything about this part for A-Push history because it's only 45 minutes. You can use some of this. This should form a foundation for you so you can respond with specific factual information, citing evidence and explaining. And I'm going to go over what you should know. And I will be, again, pointing up here, point like, you know, that you'll see on right here that I will be editing on this video, some of the things that I will be emphasizing on here. What you should know, what you have to know here, like I say on here, is the diverse and advanced civilization and cultures before the encounters with the Europeans. Before we even get to, you know, Columbus, Ponce de Leon in 1513, or Cortez in 1520, that you had a lot of diversity from the Iroquois in the northeast, you know, from the Nez Perce towards the west, and, you know, the Plains Indians, all kinds of diversity because of geography. That's what you need to know in advance too. You know Tenochtitlan, Cahokia civilizations, these subtle civilizations here, advanced in technology, the Mayans, and, you know, all the math and astronomy. So it's not like the Europeans came here and brought civilization. They are going to be mutually beneficial when you have, you know, civilization. And then again, Europeans are going to be advanced in certain areas that the Native Americans are not. Let's not over romanticize that. But you need to know that. That's number one. Number two, geography and adaptability. Why are, like, you know, the Indians in the southeast more are kind of subtle farmers in here and foster this kind of diversity? You're going to see that, like, they adapt to the temperate climate zones. You see that, of course, the Incas adapting to their surroundings around the Andes Mountains, you know, whether they're, you know, again, building those rope bridges for the potatoes that's growing in different kind of levels into the mountains around in South America. So make sure that the geography is on there, that you see this. And what really does this really for a whole thing is where they can be subtle, just like in world history, is food surpluses. The things that, and that's what gives you subtle community. And that's why I did bring a few. So our three sisters here, the squash, the green beans that I've, you know, stole from my house, like I'm sure my wife is going to be like, oh, what are you doing here? The three sisters, and didn't have an ear of corn, but I do have some cream corn here. So the corn, beans, and squash, really you have to think about from the northeast to the Algonquin, the Indians on the east coast, to the southeast and southwest. It's going to be a basis for this, you know, settled communities. You have to know that. Large urban dwellings on here on the Mississippi. All right, so getting that, once you know that, you got those three sisters farming, food surpluses. diversity, and advanced civilizations, and it kind of adapting to geography. The fourth main thing, what you've learned from first grade, is the motivation. God, gold, and glory. And please don't just say, oh, I know that, Mr. Price. I know you probably knew that since you were a toddler for some reason. Things I told you that you just out of the, ether, that kids come in with their a priori knowledge about. But what does that mean? And can you kind of explain that? Columbus and a lot of these Europeans thinking about, it's almost you're going to have another crusade to spread Christianity to the new lands that you encounter, and the new people. That maybe even define something that's divine, a Prester John, things that you hear that we think of legend today, but for them maybe some truth. Another lost tribe of Christians in here on the Western Hemisphere. So that is that. Not only spreading Christianity and promoting it into the new worlds that you encounter, but what kind of, again, to make this Christian kingdom on here. Christian allies, Christian alliances, and as you know, the competing powers with the Catholic Church at this time, and a growing Protestant kind of revolution that's growing here. So you want to secure those for God and Christianity. Of course, glory is pretty self-explanatory, and really what gives you probably the most glory is the gold. And Mr. Price, the golden rule: whoever owns the most gold rules. So that's the type of thing that the main motivation is for the money, to enrich kingdoms, to enrich kind of these new nation states that are forming right now, that are competing with one another. France, Spain, the Dutch, England as well, so like that. So all the Italian city-states right now here wanting this kind of like to enrich themselves, and this part of this kind of the foundation of their economies I'm going to go into. So know the motivations and know how to what they are. And I didn't even get into really the 1492, the Columbus encounter, those details. You should already kind of know those in some early explorers. I think you do, but I'm going over the five main things. And here is the fifth main thing. And you're going to be seeing this probably annotated on the screen here for period one. You know this since first grade, as I explained. The Columbian Exchange. Knowing that, we've got things like the potato, the tomatoes coming from the New World, going to the Old World. And even, think about things here coming from Europe, like onions, via Asia, coming to the New World. Besides all the horses, the cows, even the earthworms, the pigs and stuff, coming back, let's again in here. You have to, you're saying this, you have to know it. And it's very amazing to the amount of limited products. That's why, I was thinking coming here in the morning that if you talk about motivation, if you guys do go on a time travel thing, like, oh, my students I know are smarter. They're not going to be bringing back like paper money or even gold or even something of that nature back into the 15th and 16th century, because they'll know that, hey, first of all, I don't have a lot of gold and silver that all the Europeans are craving for. But there's something else they're craving for. And that's the thing, is as simple as this. Is this black pepper, and you bring back peppercorns. You go ahead and laugh. Go ahead and laugh again. It's no big deal. This is valuable. This is pepper right here is really grown in the tropics. In the tropical zones. This is around India and Asia. It's really a natural insecticide. Kills all the bugs, but people are paying a lot of money for now what you can get for free. It comes in bags, little pepper bags, or some kind of minimal cost. Pepper. Look at these. I was just thinking, looking into the teacher's workroom. This sugar right here. You're bringing back packs of sugar back in time and everything, and you know people are just going crazy for that, and that's going to really make the Caribbean economy and around the the South, the real southern part of the eventual United States, from Florida to Louisiana, all the sugar that just is going to be so high. So you bring that back. That's what's driving all this kind of exploration. We want these goods. We take these things for granted. I don't know if this time we're taking things for granted because we kind of know about shortages and scarcity, but we know that back then, you go back in time, you're getting immediately hungry, and you're immediately thinking about the food is awful and what they have to offer to you at this time. So that's why people are craving like pepper, cloves, and really the sweet stuff here, the sugar. Make sure you know the climate. And with our, sorry, relatable times, everything, you don't want to talk about COVID, but we know the diseases, the crosses change. Syphilis coming from like the new world to the old, and definitely we're bringing in the smallpox. We have a lot of built up immunities. The Europeans have a lot of built up immunities because they've been around a lot of these domesticated animals, and just really total devastation. 85% of Native American populations over in a century from the 1500s, 1600s, just devastated, along with just some murder and mayhem as well. I know people love to just say disease only, but a lot of being working to death and kind of just total annihilation of certain people through killings in that for people, any of the Native Americans who want to rebel and live their kind of like, maybe way of life or coexist or claim some of the things they want to, are just devastated. 85% of the population here. You know about Columbus. Everybody knows his name. Nobody knows about what he claimed the land to be, San Salvador. The Taino Indians, nobody remembers them. And I don't think really, nobody really cares. Like I said, they just will look the other way like, oh, well, it's kind of awful. That's the story of the indigenous people, not only in the Western Hemisphere, across the world. I get a little, modeling, like again, when they speaking about that. All right, that's period one. Period two, I know I'm probably stretching here, 1607 to 1754. Now, I told you 1607 is a deal breaker date. 1754, bonus date, beginnings of the French and Indian War here at this time. This has usually been 10%. I say here that as far as preparing for this exam, this is still a good basic knowledge for you. You're probably going to be given a choice about this time period or something that you can pull across in here. Because as you know, it's a very important, this is why we have the United States before the United States of 1776, so you want to make it kind of official there really with the Constitution in 1789. So, what you should know, and I'm going this on, number one, you're comparing, contrasting. Oh, okay, can I get some light here? And then there was light. Comparing and contrasting the English colonization to the Spanish, to the French, and even to the Dutch. From the Native American kind of relationships, how the French and Spanish, a little bit more integrated. In Spanish, maybe a little bit more like, decimation of life. English, just stay away from us and everything, you heathens, unless, you're definitely converting, or let's trade at least, but not into integration. And just kind of like, really that the English are more about private business and, kind of like doing the colonization and no real direct control. Spanish and French are more definitely indirect, no open immigration. They're limited about who's coming over here and who's ruling. They have more kind of direct interference in there. But know that, just know that, and I think, the big two, you talk about like the big three in World War II, the big two colonies in here, is Jamestown and the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Jamestown 1607, Massachusetts Bay 1629, and know those and compare and contrast those. I don't need to go through all that. You can look through the resources there, but you should know that. And I'm saying these are things that you will follow up on. 3, know the diverse English colonies. Know a middle colony and know that they are the breadbasket, and they're talking about the wheat and kind of from the product of the wheat, the flour. They are like, really the export colonies of the time, how they're making their commerce. New England, God and cod, small farms, mixed economy, along with trade as well. So big time. In the southern colonies, of course, your cash crops. And my main cash crops during the 17th century and the 18th century that you really want to say here is tobacco, and how labor intensive, and the what that's going to result in, the effect of being labor intensive, with tobacco and really indigo and rice during this time. And I was thinking about, since we're here in North Carolina, that don't forget about timber and deer skins and those nature here. But know what colonies and sections here, and why is the cash crop, and how it affects geography, how it's going to affect the differentiation, how they approach politics, how they approach their own self-interest, trying to unite for an American Revolution. Very good. Deal breaker terms, and I'll just list some of these here in a way here, and just deal breaker things that you've got to know. One Indian conflict in the 17th century. You don't have to know, each and every one, and maybe not even all the details. The multiple Powhatan wars and conflicts with the Jamestown, Williamsburg area here. So from 1610, 1622. 1644, Pequot War in the northeast there around the New England colony, 1637, and maybe the big one that you see in 1675, 1676 that you can't remember is Metacon's War, King Philip's War, 1680, Pope's Rebellion. I just said one. You don't have to know all of them, like again, so it may be good to recall there and there. That's kind of a deal breaker on there. Great Migration, you're going to hear that 2 times. Even that you should be held, that they want to make sure that you do know. For this Great Migration deals with the Puritans leaving, Charles I and his wackiness and kind of the persecution and kind of this kind of harassment of Puritan theology, and they're kind of like how it's antithetical or kind of coming in conflict with the Protestant Anglican Church on the way here, and how most of them come over here. City upon a Hill. Again, you know that. Rebellions, pick a rebellion, all right? I wouldn't worry about Lasal's rebellion in here, but I'm talking about, the famous one, the Bacon's Rebellion. What is that marking or beginning? It does not, immediately the next day, but what it kind of begins. The Slave Rebellion, 1712, Stoner Rebellion, 1730. Pick one. Just pick any one that you want to, that you kind of know here. Middle Passage / that, stupid triangular trade that you learned from first grade that I have, problems with, but know what, details about that and turning to African slavery. And, beginning with the Portuguese, really with Prince Henry the Navigator in the 15th century here, and the horrible conditions that you think but maybe you want to brush up on. Now, your favorite, the First Great Awakening, George Whitefield, Jonathan Edwards, Old Lights, New Lights, the kind of creation of these kind of Ivy League schools. But main thing, the unification of the colonies through Protestant religions. Yes, it's going to become a little bit more diverse, the spread of Baptists and Methodists, but they're unified more in a way. Becoming kind of uniquely kind of American, evangelical, as you can say, that's very, indigenous to like American Protestant religions. This kind of anti-Catholic fervor, this growing distance and disconnect with the Anglican Church. That's the First Great Awakening. Coinciding with the Enlightenment ideas that are still bubbling up and spreading over into the Americas here. Deist kind of ideas that there's, really no direct guidance over day-to-day life. So I want you to know that. And patterns, the deal breaker things here. This Starting off with just kind of what I was alluded to before with the gold and silver, mercantilist economies that grow the empires. The accumulation of that will make your nation state rich and powerful, that you can dominate over the other nation states, and colonies will serve the mother country over this. Then evolving into the English colonies of the salutary / benign neglect, which what salutary is good over here because they're occupied with other things here in the early 18th century, mainly the French and the Spanish over warring, as I'm foreshadowing up to 1754 here. So you have to know all those here. Those are kind of deal breaker things in here. Just go through that checklist. You'll see it come up here, on the screen here that I'll be text putting up there, but make sure you know that. So breaking stuff down for you, that stuff that you need to know for sure. Start with all this, and then you might be saying, hey, I'm telling you, if you just go with what I'm going to be doing these next several videos, if you have this, you'll be more than prepared for what they throw at you in the free response. Guaranteed, my guarantee, if you do this. Some of you already have not clicked on probably one video on here, so you're total checked out. What am I gonna do for you? I don't know, but just I mean that's been a pattern since freshman year, so I don't know. But most of you guys are very conscientious and very responsible. Now, the last things: seeds of the French and Indian War. Seeds of the American Revolution during this time period. You know the seeds. You don't need to know the detail. King William's, Queen Anne's, King George I's wars and conflicts. The duel for North America. The duel. Alright, with the Spanish, with the French, culminating into the beginnings of the French and Indian War, and really a world war across the world in 1754. So, those are the seeds. Know the seeds during this time. Seeds of the American Revolutionary War. I talked about already a few. First Great Awakening. Enlightenment ideas around it at this time period. Alright? This is going on here. That is feeding this. And colonial practices of their own control and politics. They have a tradition of colonial assembly / legislators. It is more their growing tradition of representative democracy and direct democracy and just small locales and town meetings. Something that was always attributed to the Boston area. And this last 5 minutes in here, or where the battery goes dead here. What I was saying is that please know the seeds of the American Revolution during this time period before your little precious Stamped Act of 1765 that you've known from first grade and been taught, and this no taxation without representation, that you have colonial assemblies, you have the First Great Awakening, you have these kind of practice of town meetings, more of a direct or representative democracy in here. These Enlightenment ideas about that's kind of anti-monarchical, and that, social contract. All these things are the seeds of revolution before you get in this post-French and Indian War basic kind of cause here. So it really is a good way to reference to go back to during this time period as showing that they kind of, again, this benign salutary neglect. You have to know that was going on before the end of the French and Indian War as showing the seeds for the American Revolution. Please, guys. Some recommendations here. Some people like this United States history AMSCO book for review. You don't have to get it. Just listen to me. I know people love the Give Me Liberty textbook anyway. It's so riveting. But listen to me, listen to these videos, look at some of the annotations I have here. This is all you're going to need. Take time out for a push and you'll be more prepared. Strike the iron while it's hot. Be ready for this test. gain college credit. Your senior year will be coming up, I promise you. Yes, that's right, I promise you. This shall pass. So why not like take advantage of this time here? Learn, you're already very knowledgeable. We went through 3/4 of the class, finish up strong, you know, across the finish line and everything, and get out and get credit here, and you know, keep working on learning and preparing yourself for this. Love all you guys.